I will like to expand eventually to other readers, fantasy in general. X, I do try to keep it more agnostic when I'm talking about my book and focus on the building politics and the medieval city builder, which is another thing that, like, there's not a lot of that. So that's a good selling point. Whereas on Instagram, I focus more on the romance because that's where mostly romance readers are.
Yeah, or TikTok, there's you start getting into book talk, that's just a whole weird group of people.
Yeah, well, and that's also a question of what reader or, what audience do you not want? There's a lot of crossover between Instagram and Book Talk, and of course the crazies always get the most attention. Most are just romance fans. But you don't want to get a particular fan with very strong expectations that you're not going to be able to satisfy because then they will not hesitate to give you bad reviews.
How important or inevitably, a bad review is gonna happen. So, how do you treat those within, like, your marketing? Do you ignore them outright? Do you go the, "Look at this idiot," and, you know, do you monetize the haters with it? Do you have an approach?
So the first few hurt because it's different when, like, I've been in writing groups for 20 years. So I'm used to that level of critique, and writers are very careful and generally very careful and refined about how they address each other's books. They give you a compliment sandwich. So the first few bad reviews hurt, but you get enough reviews, and fortunately, I've gotten enough that don't make sense, then you can just shrug them off altogether. Because I've gotten some that say, like, that the first book looks like it was cut in half for length, and then I got another review that said that they didn't see why there needed to be the rest of the series because everything was satisfied in book 1. Well, both of these cannot be true. So, I'm appreciative of the feedback and I try to take aboard the stuff that makes sense, but I've gotten enough that doesn't make sense and not everybody's going to respond the same. Not everybody reads it the same way. And so you just kind of have to accept that and let it roll off.
Right on. And now I always ask this question because one of the reasons you find people going the self-publishing route is because they find, I guess, we'll say the market of the mainstream market is not interested in certain ideas. Do you feel like your ideas pushed you to self-publish versus trying to do all the querying and all of the finding the agent and all that, or it just you have the faith in yourself that you can do better than what those people are going to do, and you'd rather take it yourself?
It's both. One is my heroine is not a girl boss and never will be. She starts off very timid, and it takes a long and time for her to come into her own strength and understanding, her when I say strength, I mean, like, her strengths in particular. She's never going to compete with my male lead she's never going to pick up a weapon. She's got her own particular areas that she's good at, and I find that way more interesting than yet another 100-pound twig swinging around a sword.
So she did kill a nice girl in under 5 seconds.
No, no, there is none of I am so sick of that. That is so boring. It is so unrealistic. And if you can pardon the rant for a second, like, as a woman, that doesn't reflect my experience or my interests. Like, and as a veteran, like, I am fully aware of what I'm physically capable of, and I have to be smarter than that. And I find that much more interesting than pretending like I can go toe to toe with a 6 foot man because I know I can't.
I mean, in general, if you talk to people on the internet, I remember I was once told that I married my wife so that I could control the life of a black woman.
Oh, I would like to hear her response to that.
Well, I mean, more than anything, I'm like, you the amount of agency that takes away from my wife as a person, like, "Oh, you must think she's the single dumbest human being on the earth to marry someone that would just marry her to own her." Like, I can't imagine anything more demeaning to her as a person, so I think one of us has a problem, and it ain't me.
Yeah, well, and that's my response to girl bosses, honestly, because it's such a anti-woman way to look at the world, to only value masculine strength. And, like, for most of it, especially when you're writing a more historical fantasy, Like, the realities of biology in that time, there's a reason why women didn't go far from the house. There were many reasons why women didn't go far from the house. Some hygienic, some practical, just, the odds of being picked up and never seen again were much higher in those days. So it's one interesting as a matter of a different world than ours, but also like women did successfully navigate that world for centuries. And imagining the ways that they did that and the strengths and values that they brought to that world is much more interesting to me. And in a medieval city builder, which mine is, like the war's over, they won new lands, they're building a city in it. And so they're having to develop society in tandem with that. So starting from the beginning with that, and then men have particular roles and women have particular roles, and it's not because the men are keeping the women down, it's because the women are very good at what they do, and showing that value is interesting.
It's always been interesting to me to, I mean, from my perspective, it's like women have controlled the entire thrust of human history. Like, their choices in mating literally decide what the future is going to be. And I mean, I guess this, creating the entire future is maybe not as glamorous as being able to swing an axe, but it's just frustrating.
Yeah, and I've spent in the course of writing the story, I've had a lot of reason to sort of think this through in terms of like the complementary roles that men and women play in society. And women have always been the softer, unrecorded hand. So when you take the concept of law and politics, for example, this is public, it is recorded, it is known in history. But what you don't see is like, say, you've got a criminal in the neighborhood. Women were the ones, like historically, they would have started small and local and exchanged gossip and shame in order to try to get little 10-year-old Johnny to stop shoplifting in the neighborhood. They were the soft, unofficial hand of trying to prevent crime. And so then when Johnny graduates to robbing stores, then the hard hand of the law, which is usually masculine, gets involved. But those were two spheres of society. Like you had the society side that women were in charge of, that was unofficial, that was just a matter of binding the community together, tending the community, exchanging information, saying who was trusted, who was not. This stuff does not get written down, but it still bound the community together. And it was a crucial role that we're no longer filling.
Wow. Well, I mean, honestly, that is a crazy long conversation that I would love to have with you sometime.
We veered off a bit. And yet, there is not a long lecture on the subject in my book. It is very much show, don't tell, but that idea is in there.
Well, I'm glad you're tackling concepts. One of the things that, like, I've said about the quote unquote Iron Age is that this is a time for people to say that they want to say all the crap that's been diluted for centuries because of the mainstream business of publishing, gatekeeping, and watering everything down. Like, I don't really care what anyone's politics are. I'd rather see them as they envision them as opposed to through the lens of what a big multinational corporation thinks they're trying to say or thinks is going to be more palatable. I kind of like the unfiltered, raw, you know, idea behind something personally.
Yeah, well, and just being allowed to have different ideas. Like there's a certain approved set of ideas, which I do think, to go back to the earlier question, like the fact that there is a certain character, female character, that is allowed and is not allowed was a factor in why I chose to self publish. And then the other reason was just simple return on investment. Like, I don't, if I have to do my own marketing either way, then I don't see what traditional publication really brings to the table anymore.
I mean, most of the people I know who do traditional publishing, they still end up having to do almost all of their own marketing anyways. So to me, anytime I hear anyone taking this, I'm like, I think you guys dodged the bullet.
Yeah, well, and as a fantasy writer, like I've had a few writer friends that have gotten an agent, gotten published, started their series, and then, of course, no marketing support. And they thought that once they got a, agent and publisher, then they were golden. They didn't have to do anything else. They just had to let it roll out onto Amazon and it would do its thing. And the fact is, no, those series withered on the vine. And so not only are they not making money off those series, they're no longer allowed to write that world because the publisher gets three bad books and then they say, all right, we're done. You got anything else? They're not going to nurture you through. And so those authors have to wait, either buy back the copyright or wait however long it is, 7 years, 10 years, before they can write in that world again. So they lost their whole world. And no, I'm not willing to take that risk.
Awesome. Well, where can I send people so they can check out you and your book?
So melissajcave.com.
Beautiful. You know how many authors I have difficulty knowing, just send people to your name. You give them a whole spiel. Oh, http dot slash backslash dash. No, just your name.com, folks.
Try to make it
And
easy.
that, to me, that's the whole point, is making it as easy to get the book in people's hands as possible. So thank you so much for coming on today, Melissa. I thought it was a fantastic conversation. Definitely with some stuff that I don't know that we've ever really talked about on this show. I got into some specifics that I know my audience will definitely appreciate. So, like I said, thank you.
Yeah, not a problem. Great talking to you.